Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webcast today, How Next Generation Technology Can Improve ROI in the Facilities Industry. I'm Indira from the ARC Facilities Marketing Department. And before I get to the speakers, just wanted to remind you to go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A panel as you think of them, and our speakers will address those at the end during our Q&A session. We are recording the webinar, and we will be sure to send a follow-up email to everyone who has registered today. So look for that in the next couple of days. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the speakers. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, so our moderator today is Suri Suryakumar, who is the CEO of ARC Facilities. And we have our panelists, David Trask, National Director at ARC Facilities, excuse me, and Jonathan Westall, Vice President of Ancillary Services at MLK Junior Community Hospital, and Byron Woods, who's the Dean of Facilities and Facilities Planning at the College of the Sequoias. So we're really excited to hear from all of you today. And Suri, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Indira, and good morning, everybody. So let's jump right in. In order to examine, kick off this webinar, we wanted to examine the facility management trends in 2020, especially in the technology sector. What are the overall technology trends and how does it impact the facility management space? And then, of course, what are the challenges and the opportunities? And there are many. Obviously, security is a big one, followed up by cost. That is also a big issue. Then integration of various softwares, impact of IoTs, and so on. But the one which really stood out for me is this. There are 9 billion mobile connections worldwide. That's 1 billion over the number of people on the face of Earth. So that clearly shows that how big mobile has become. And it's not anymore about just phone connections, but it's becoming a major conduit for accessing and distributing information. And another study shows that when the software is easy and comfortable to use, then the number of users explode. So again, the ease of use is driving adoption. In a study done by Deloitte, they basically found out that research by Deloitte, when connected technologies such as IoTs are used to access information in advance from devices, then it could become a game changer. In other words, using IoTs in devices in facilities to access information in advance, either to predict or diagnose the problems. So that also is a major trend which could evolve according to this study. So David, you actually visit more facilities than any one of us in your trade and in what you do every day. Let us know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, thanks, Suri. You know, at the end of the day, technology is just changing. It's changing every day, but I think with the pandemic, it's really forced us to change even more. I know, think about some of the technologies that we're using today that we didn't before. I know Jonathan over at MLK, they use infrared cameras to check temperatures of everybody who walks in the building. They didn't have that 2 years ago. So look at how quickly we all pivoted just because of a pandemic. But then there's other things. I met with a client the other day that they have a chain of movie theaters and they're reopening all the theaters. But one of the things that they were able to do is they connected their ticketing system directly with their HVAC system. So what it does is it actually adjusts it adjusts the temperature in a particular theater based on the number of tickets sold. That's amazing. But think about other technologies. Everybody's got a phone in their pocket. I've got two, for goodness sakes. But think about even, my parents used Zoom this year. I never thought my parents would ever use Zoom. But think about all the other technologies we use in facilities every day. Imagine walking up to your device, walking up to that air handler, and you've got a QR code on there. So now you scan that QR code, just like you scan when you go to a restaurant these days, because of the pandemic, you scan the little QR code on the table and it pulls up the restaurant menu. Well, now you pull up all the information for your device, all the serial number, make, model, the belt sizes, the filter sizes, all of that information, all on your phone. But what that means, all of these things means now we're accessing information faster. Everybody can access information today faster. And that's what it's all really about.
Thank you, David. Excellent examples. I mean, it clearly shows that in general, how we are starting to use technology in a variety of verticals. So at this stage, let's do a quick poll question with our audience to see, which technology are they using? Paul, if you can kick off the poll. If you take a minute and answer these questions, we will quickly have a snapshot of the kind of technologies that is being used. Thank you, Paul. Sure, seems like a large majority of people are using BMSs without a doubt. There's still significant amount, 33% of the people use other technologies, 5% do building software systems, and GIS is 5%. So there is a mixed use of technology. There is no doubt that technology is being used extensively in the facility space. So with that, that gives a snapshot of the audience we have, and it's very helpful, obviously, for the panelists to understand that. With that, let's go on to the next slide here. Recently, in an article Politico called Martin Luther King Jr. Community Hospital, the hospital of the future. So, Jonathan, being the head of the ancillary services in this huge facility, tell us a little more about this.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that's a huge compliment to us, and we're a little bit lucky. I'm in a newer building. The building's only 6 years old, so we're able to integrate a lot of technology and a lot of items without retrofitting from the ground up. And taking into account like the BMS system, or like David mentioned, infrared cameras. Another interesting thing we've done is an aggression detection software that kind of links to the back of cameras, so you don't have to run any conduit. It's all wireless. It detects glass break, raised voices, and gets our security guards over there, usually before the incident turns into a violent or physical incident. Usually there's some yelling first or something beforehand. It detects gunshots too. Luckily, we haven't had any experience with that, knock on wood, inside the facility. But I think that's the key to be considered. I'm going to say the hospital of the future, as they quoted, is getting systems that replace massive amounts of FTEs. You always need a human being there. You always need the common sense and the decision making of your personnel. But I mean, we need to replace the kind of the mundane jobs where it was just someone standing there or sitting there, the temperature checks, that kind of stuff. So I think that's the direction we're going. And ideally, when we're building out these new facilities, we can integrate that stuff on the front end.
Fantastic, Jonathan. I mean, it seems like it surely shows the things you can do in a facility like that, especially when it is new, and the kind of technologies which are getting implemented. So that leads to, I would like to have two questions answered by the panelists. First, the use of latest technology, how is it changing the way facilities professionals are managing buildings? Now, Byron, obviously, you are the dean of facilities in a school. I'm sure you have, as opposed to Jonathan, you might have a lot of old facility buildings. Tell us a little more about how the technology is impacting the way, you are managing buildings.
Sure. So, I mean, it's no secret that as facility managers, we are required to be everywhere at once. Our district specifically, it consists of 3 campuses, about 10 to 20 miles apart. We have over 700,000 gross square feet of facilities and only 5 trade-specific maintenance staff. So for our institution, we need to access as much information as possible when we're on the go. And I always say time is money, and it's true for us. When I started in 2015, none of our plan sets were digitized. We had flat files and boxes full of documents in a closet. Our EMS was the only web-based software we had. And since then, over the last 6 years, our work order software is now cloud-based, and all of our plan sets are digitized and cloud-based. And all that information is accessible from a phone, from a computer, from a tablet. I can be anywhere and access that information at any time. So it boils down to having accessible and organized information that will ultimately improve your efficiency and effectiveness of your operation.
Excellent. Excellent. So these are some of your codes. We found it very interesting, Byron, how simple maintenance issues can really become costly when the information is not there. So that leads us to the second question. So why, obviously the poll also showed the audience have a lot of technologies implemented. Jonathan, this question is to you. Why invest in new technology when staff members can maximize what's already in place? I mean, is it really necessary to invest more money in new technologies?
100%, I think so. Because, I mean, you're going to invest in it at some point, and you want it to be new when you invest in it. You don't want to be buying something that's, already 6-7 years old, that's dated. So you should maximize what you have. But there's new technologies coming out every day, new advances coming out every day. So the idea that you can take advantage of that, and a lot of this stuff integrates with each other. So maximizing the new stuff with the old stuff is kind of, the hybrid model that obviously everybody's striving for. But putting your head in the sand and not researching new technology, I think, is a disservice to your organization.
I agree. I definitely agree. One of the things which we are noticing is that in spite of all the technology we are employing, it is not uncommon for us at all to come across a situation or hear of news that, some place got flooded because there is a huge damage, or there has been catastrophes of various sorts. So, this is obviously something that it's an ongoing thing in spite of the fact that we have made all these technology advancements. So we did a survey, and the survey shows that in spite of the millions of dollars invested, 70% of the buildings in the US still hold building information such as plans and operations and maintenance information on paper, 70%, even as of today. And even the information which is digitized is basically in multiple silos. In other words, it's not in the same place. Some information is in one server, another information is another software. It seems like information is spread all over. And it appears from the survey that people in facilities are, spending a lot of time looking for information. I'll come back to David on this one. David, you visit more facilities, like I said previously, than anyone else. Give us your thought on this, and what are you seeing out there?
No, you're 100% right, Suri. It comes down to who knows what is where in most facilities. I see it all the time. And, I've had extensive conversations with Byron and Jonathan and his team about this very subject. It's people are relying on a handful of people within an organization that know where the stuff is. But oftentimes they don't have time. They physically go on site. They've got a pipe burst in a building. They just go to the site to try to figure out where the shutoff is, or they call Bob because Bob's the guy that knows where everything is. But Bob's going to walk out the door one day. That's the challenge. But the other thing is, ask yourself this. You've got a phone in your pocket. Why can't you do what Byron said? Pull your phone out of your pocket on site, wherever the heck you are, and know where that shutoff is. That's the way it should happen. But look at these photos that Suri just pulled up here. You've got piles of stuff all over the place. Some of this is in somebody's office. Some of it's in Bob's office. It's locked. Or you've got it on a share drive someplace. I can't tell you how many folks I talk to that have got stuff just loaded on a share drive and they can't find it any better than they can find the paper drawings. So they just don't. That's a problem. You need to be able to react faster to find the information to do your job.
Thank you, David. I agree. I mean, this is all too common sight we see when we visit customers or talk to customers. It doesn't shock anybody when we show pictures like that, especially facility managers. So, technology available today can address this problem. Jonathan talked about, new buildings and how much technology can advance the facility management space in terms of getting information and being more efficient. And that's something that we want to talk about today. New technology developments such as artificial intelligence and machine learning have come long ways in the last several years. It's really becoming very powerful. And it's just not about, one thing I want to point out to the audience and, obviously get feedback from the panelists as well, is not about just locating the drawing. Locating the drawing in itself seems to be the challenge based on everything what we are seeing, but it's also just extracting the information from those drawings. So, it's not a question of just getting the drawing, but getting the information. So think about this. You are in building number 18 on the 8th floor, standing on a scaffolding, trying to locate a shutoff valve. Imagine reading a 36 by 48 drawing and trying to then find out where that shutoff valve is. Or pulling a 36 by 48 drawing on a laptop or a desktop for that matter. So it all means time. Why would we have to do that? Why can't we push a button which says shut off valves and then push another button which says 8th floor and be able to know where those buttons are? Those kind of technologies are without a question becoming available today. So I would like to ask our panelists, how much do you and your team rely on the use of mobile devices to gain access to critical building information? How much do you use it? I would like to actually get panelists information. Paul, before we get to the question from the audience, I would like to get the panelists to get feedback. Jonathan, why don't you go first?
So we're approaching that. Like I said, we're rolling out some more. We're going to use ARC actually, but we already used some little pieces of it. But we're going to roll it out because I think the huge benefit right there, like you said, it's the blueprints and the data, having it there, not having to search through that stack of paper, which is kind of what we inherited when we got the building. But the idea that everybody has a mobile device on them, we're using them in our security department and we're using them in our respiratory department to dispatch people quickly and efficiently to patient or situations. So it's getting there, but ideally by the end of next year, everybody will have some mobile device that links back to a hospital system.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, the idea of, and you just said something, which is everybody has a mobile device, and why can't we access information on that? Is definitely the way things are moving along. Byron, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm using my mobile device for this almost daily on this. Whether it's looking for plans or certain things through the plans, it's not usually the shutoffs,
Right.
but more importantly, I know how to access the shutoffs in the event of emergency really quickly.
Right.
But typically, it's just finding plan information, accessing that quickly. I'll also get, in the evening hours, I'll have a custodian shoot me a text and say, hey, can you turn the air conditioning on in this room? Well, it doesn't matter where I'm at. Within about 2 minutes, I can turn the AC on for them through our EMS system. So your phone travels with you everywhere you go, which is good and bad.
Absolutely.
But it's nice to be able to access that information right there anytime.
Yeah, we're all getting used to stuff like that, right? Switching off lights, or it's just not limited to opening garage doors. You're switching on security system, switching off security system. I certainly agree. Okay, let's check with the audience. Where do you think we have the most amount of instant access? Where do you think instant access to information is critical in your opinion? Is it inspections? Is it shut-off valves? Is it legacy renovation documents, emergency situation, or all of the above? Let's find out what the audience think. Okay, the results are starting to come in here. 4% of them use them for inspections, legacy information, 9%, emergency situations, 26%. That's understandable, but it seems like almost all of them are having, mobile access, using mobile to get instant access to information. That's pretty good. Excellent. With that, let's move on to the next slide. So some time ago, we did a study of catastrophes in large facilities. And we took the last 10 years and we tried to understand the impact of these accidents or catastrophes in large buildings. How frequently does it happen? In which areas does it happen? Is it related to power equipment failure, water, wind related? Is it accidents? Is it fires, gas? And then we also try to break that down in segments of, up to 20 buildings in a facility or over 20 buildings, and then try to assess the cost. So this is an extensive study we did. And the outcome was pretty surprising, at least for me. I do know that catastrophes happen, accidents happen, it costs money, but I didn't realize how frequently it happens. And what we found out was, weighted average of a cost of a catastrophe is, over $500,000. And it literally happens every 2 years in these large facilities. Byron, your thoughts on this? How do you see this? How do you read this data?
You know what? I think it depends on where you're located and how exposed you are to some of these elements. I mean, we're in the Central Valley in California, so the fires are up in the hills. They don't really impact us too much. We're out of earthquake territory. So if any of this applies to us, it would likely be power equipment failure. And typically those pieces of equipment are very expensive. Annually, I think these numbers are a little high for us, but still, I mean, you have to be prepared for it. You don't know when it's going to happen. And it just boils down to properly maintaining your equipment and also stashing away some funds so you can replace it when it at the end of its life cycle.
Right. Jonathan, any thoughts on this one? Obviously, you have a relatively new building, but what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I definitely think I'm hoping to never experience some of these catastrophes and such, but we have had quite a few power failures as we don't run our own central plant. It's piped in from a county facility. So the idea when we have to do ATS transfers or we need to hurry up and get the power off or turn emergency generators on, we have to send someone to a separate building that's not run by us. And sometimes it's one of my employees has never been over there. So I think the instant access right there, off the top, it flips the switch on some of our power loss and power shutdown procedures, which is huge savings every time. Every minute is hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. I agree. I mean, it's amazing the amount of dollars when you start putting the dollars, how, what it turns out to be. Okay. So I'd like to also get panelists, input, the three of you. David, before I go on to this one, any comments on the last, on the catastrophes? Because I'm sure you bump into them more often than not.
Oh, 100%. It's very much so what Byron had said with it. Really sort of depends on where you are. I live in Florida. So we had a hurricane that brushed by the coast of Florida yesterday. And so we're always on alert for things like that. But around the country, think about all the other things. You've got tornadoes in the Midwest. You've got all these different events that are in particular for these different regions. But I can't tell you how many times I hear from our clients that are up in the Northeast that have a pipe burst because it froze, and then trying to find those types of shutoffs. I mean, it really does depend on where you are around the country, but all it takes is one. All it takes is one to add up. But, how many smaller events add up to a lot of money? So you just kind of got to prioritize it that way and think of it that way.
Agree. I mean, obviously situations vary. I remember one customer in Hawaii, I mean, they had floods and then, they literally lost all of their legacy documents. So I guess, this comes in many forms and many shapes. Okay, moving on. So, one of the things is that, when we want to invest in technology, when we have to invest in technology, somebody has to pay for it. We know that. So understanding the return on investment of all the technologies is very, very critical, because that's what we have to do as facilities managers, be able to understand that and be able to position that. So where do you see the greatest impact of your return on investment as a result of leading the technology? And I want us to talk through that, so it'll be helpful for the audience. Jonathan, your thought on this?
So I think the greatest impact of the ROI for us is, like I said, you do need skilled tradesmen, but it's got rid of a lot of our menial labor tasks. The people who had to walk around and check sensors, or is that light out, or does the exit sign light up when you open the door, things like that. And the ROI on that is huge, because those are entry-level employees. The turnover was great, the benefits cost was high, and now putting that on sensors or automated systems, it's eliminated that whole field of employees that were just churning in and out.
Right. Okay. In other words, legacy employees. That's what you're talking about, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Byron, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think with the ROI, it's difficult to quantify a cost, so to say. So I would have to measure it by the improving our efficiency and our productivity, accomplishing more items in less time. As I mentioned before, we had limited staffing, 5 skilled maintenance, trade-specific maintenance staff covering the 3 campuses. So using mobile technology, we're able to we can access photos of electrical panels or anything remotely before we even travel to the site. So being able to do so, that hopefully saves us future trips over there to each site. So we actually had a couple examples here, a couple recent incidents. I was actually sitting in a management meeting, and we got a work order for a hand dryer out at one of the other campuses that kept running in the bathroom. And the custodian said, "Oh, it won't shut off." And so I was able to pull up on my phone a picture of the panel, tell them which breaker, where it was located within about 2 minutes, and was able to shut that breaker off. And then another example, we just had a construction meeting recently with a grading contractor on site. And I asked him, I said, "Well, do you have the plans?" He says, "Oh, I have 12 sets of plans in my office, but I don't have them with me." I was able to pull up on my phone the plan set for the project and show him the exact detail of what we were talking about within a minute. So that right there, you're saving time, which ultimately you're saving money.
Yeah, absolutely. Great examples, Byron. Great examples, and they all account for dollars. So, David, let me ask you. I mean, you obviously go to many facilities. You also consult with a lot of people on issues like this. But how do you put numbers around this? I know you prepared this slide. Talk through this for us.
Yeah, I mean, you got to ask yourself a few of these things that you see off to the right here is, how much time are my people spending, and you contribute a cost to that. How many things am I fixing that really were under warranty, but the third one here, I think, is one that is really underserved, and people just don't think about this type of thing, or it's their worst nightmare is the legacy folks on my team that know where everything is are about ready to walk out that door. I just did a LinkedIn poll just to get some information just this week, and I was shocked at how many folks had 7+ people out of the 180 people that responded. 60 of them said that they've got 7 or more people on their maintenance staff that are ready to walk out in the next few years. Think about that. Those are the folks who know everything about your building or about to walk out that door. How do you qualify an ROI on that? You can't get that information back before they walk out that door. Well, think about capturing that stuff before they leave. There are technologies out there that do that, but then you've got catastrophes, you've got new employee onboarding. You know, most folks are spending 6 months to a year onboarding somebody and getting them up to fully up to speed, and then that's the person who's on night shift. Or you've got routine maintenance breakdowns, you've got overtime, space savings. There's all kinds of things that you can recoup some ROI, but again, I think one of the biggest things that I always focus on when I'm talking to people is, how are you going to replace that legacy knowledge and get that stuff before they walk out that door?
Right. Yeah, I mean, eventually everything turns out to, eventually in terms of dollars or cost. So, I mean, all these examples are excellent ones, David. Thank you. Yes, I mean, so everything we discuss, it's clear from every different angle. The access to information is very critical, no matter what software you use, right? Instant access to information, it seems like a different category of software, one that is critical, and it works hand in hand with everything else you have. And whether you have a CMMS or IWMS or a BMS. So with that in mind, it seems like there is a gap in the existing software we have, and the gap needs to be filled. And then this seems to be the category which can fill that gap. So if I just put this up, I would like to get feedback from both Jonathan and Byron and you, David. Many companies use smart building software. And then, of course, CMMS, this is the largest category used by everybody, either a CMMS or IWMS. And then, of course, BMS, according to the survey we just saw, almost all of the facilities have that. And it seems like this one, the building information, building plans and information access management seems to be a category of its own. Byron, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think just accessing the plans when you need them. Oh my gosh, it's priceless information. What I found that's worked for us too is it's not just having the information, it's accessing it quickly, and it's how you organize and format that information that's most important. We've actually formatted it in a way to where we can track down the project by location, by date. So you're sorting through either the initial construction, the remodels. Once you get to that, you're going to the as-builts or the bid set. Any addendums or information is easily accessed. And then, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. And then, yeah, I mean, you can access anything at any time and implement it. It's incredible.
Right. Great, Byron. Jonathan, your thoughts on this?
I just echo, like I said, what Byron said there. The plans, like I said, we're even a new facility like this, getting it turned over to us like that. I think it's critical. You having to have them and having to go search for them, especially when we have OSHPA inspectors and we have whole other regulatory agencies that come here for healthcare. They come walk the facility and check things out. Having to tell them, or Joint Commission surveyors, that no, let me go find the plans, or let me go get this. It's not a good look. You know what I mean? You look a little unorganized. But when you have it right there at your touch, you can't beat that.
Right. Totally agree. I mean, it's definitely not a good look when you have all these really high-end sophisticated technology or software systems around you, but you still seem to have a document storage room or a server full of folders and files. David, you see this in real life. So, tell us more about how a software can be used, and, what do you see in these terms?
Yeah, I mean, really what it comes down to is access to information. We've heard it over and over and over again. I hear it in the field every day. My guys can't find the stuff they need to do their job. You've heard it with Byron, you've heard it with Jonathan. At the end of the day, that's critical. It's being able to respond in an emergency. It's being able to respond when you've got a project going on. It's just the day-to-day jobs of the maintenance folks, not having to dig through stuff, not having to search for stuff, not having to pick up the phone and call Bob because Bob's the guy that knows where everything is. It's what's in every single person's pocket, their phone. Pull your phone out of your pocket and find what you need in a couple of seconds, a couple of clicks, or swipes of your finger. That's what it's about. It's accessing my drawings, accessing shut-off locations. There's no excuse for you not to be able to do that. The technology's there today.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I agree. I mean, it's clear that, accessing complex information, building information from mobile devices, especially with, as we originally talked about, with the growth of mobile devices, 9 billion out there, would certainly become a game changer when we start implementing them widespread in the facilities world. Can't wait for that to happen. Excellent. We are up on time. So Andira, back to you and questions from audience in this regard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Suri. So let me just go ahead and dive in. We've got only we have time for just a couple questions. Here's one. What are the best ways to prepare my team to integrate new technology?
Integrate new technology. What are the best ways? Okay, Byron, your thoughts on that?
Oh man, this is tough. It's kind of double-edged sword. The experienced, tenured staff, all the information they have is in their heads. So hopefully they play nice and want to be able to get that information out and kind of show off what they know to you. But at the end of the day, our goal is to document all the critical information for the long-term success, of our facilities, of our institution. So having the right technology to be able to document that information and organize it in a fashion that any of our staff can access at any time, it's most critical.
Thank you, Byron. That's an interesting point. It doesn't always cross my mind. Lots of them have legacy information in their head. How do you get that in and get it into the system? I mean, that's obviously, once you get it into the system, then you are not dependent. I think Jonathan touched on that previously. David, your thoughts on this one?
No, he's exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, those legacy guys and gals on your team, they may fight it. They may push back. But if they win the lottery tomorrow, they're not coming back to work. So, I mean, think about that. I mean, or, they take a vacation, they decide I'm going to retire in 2 weeks. I mean, think about that. You're in the position where, these folks are not going to always, volunteer to share that information or volunteer to do it. You have to make an effort to, this is our policy. This is what we're going to do. Think about, when you gave them their first phone and, they went from a radio to now they've got a smartphone and you're accessing your work orders and everything on your smartphone. Sometimes it's kicking and screaming, but the new folks on your team, they're using that stuff today. So it's not just about the older folks, it's the new folks they're coming in. They're already using technology and they're going to question, why aren't you using stuff on your phone? Or why can't you access it on your phone? Because they do it every day in their regular lives. You should have instant access to information.
I'll tell you, I'll chime in real quick. I'll tell you what else works. If you entice them with a nice new iPad, they will be very happy to give you information that they can use that
iPad. That's a good point.
It's a good investment. It's a good investment.
That's a good investment too. I mean, David, you just touched on something which, you talked about previously, retiring, you talked about. I mean, I do know with the pandemic, a lot of companies, because of the staffing challenges or because of, cost issues at the early stages, they offered early retirement plans. And the next thing you know is hordes of people were retiring. And I guess it's not surprising, given we have a large majority of baby boomers in the facilities space, right? So that would become a problem. And it'd be nice to entice them with something so that they can actually put that information and play with it. Next question, Andira.
Yeah, so the last question I'll ask, just because we're up on time, and we get this one a lot. It's a question that we get often, but what do we do with all the files we've digitized on hard drives?
Okay, David, would you like to do that? I'm sure you bump into that situation all the time.
Oh, certainly. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's about access. Again, I keep saying this, but access to information. You've got it on your share drive. Well, your share drive isn't going to help you when you're on a roof, or you're in a basement where you have no connection, or you're not carrying your laptop around. Like Byron said, get your folks an iPad. Load everything into the cloud so you've got access to it wherever you are. Like Byron said too. He was able to control an HVAC system in a particular room. They called him, he opened up his phone, boom, he accessed the information, turned it on. No matter where you are, you're not able to access your servers typically. Your servers are they're in a closet in your building someplace, or they're in your server room, and a lot of folks won't allow you access to that stuff remotely. You're not logging in remotely to access that stuff. And if you do, you still can't find it if it's not organized. So get yourself organized. Think about that picture that Suri showed a little while ago. It's got all those different files listed on a share drive. Well, that doesn't do me any good if they're not named right. And I can't find what it is because it's not even named by the project or the date or even the building, for goodness sakes. You have to be organized, and you have to be able to access that information remotely.
Another thing, David, piggyback off what you're saying, is you got to keep in mind who's going to be using the mobile software. Not all of our maintenance workers are familiar with how to read architectural plans. And that was where I lost my train of thought earlier, was when you get into a plan set, I've actually itemized it by trade. So electrical plans, I took out the electrical, separated it from the irrigation, separated it from the mechanical. So in the event of an emergency, we could find out, oh, shoot, it's electrical, boom, right there. There's 10 sheets I need to go through. So just something to keep in mind. It's very important.
Well, and, to what you're saying there too, Byron, also, and I know you touched on this with regards to file formats. It should be in a file format. Save it as a PDF, not as a CAD file. Not everybody's got CAD. They can't open it. So have it in a universal format that everybody can open and everybody can access it.
Yeah, good point, David. And Byron, very good point with regard to, organizing the files. So that, we also touched on it earlier. It's very easy to digitize or scan all the drawings and put it on some server or feel like you have a digital file, but that's equally difficult as a hard copy file to locate and then go on to read. But having them organized and having access using software is really the game changer. Well, we are for time. Jonathan, Byron, David, thank you so much for the input. And Andira, back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We had a couple of folks who thought we were going to show a demo of our facilities, but we do often do webinars at least once a month, so look out for the emails on those. And we can include a link in our follow-up email to a video just to give some folks an idea of how our app looks. I want to thank everyone for attending today. As a reminder, we recorded the webinar, and we will send out that link in a follow-up email in the next couple of days. We do appreciate everybody spending half an hour with us today. Thanks, Paul and Trade Test, for hosting the webinar, and thanks to Suri, David, Byron, and Jonathan for speaking today. We appreciate it. If anybody has questions, here's our information here on the screen. Please feel free to reach out, visit our website to learn more, or send us a note. Thanks so much, and everybody have a wonderful day.